Pope Leo decided to weigh in on the situation going down in Iran, and I must say, as a Catholic, Holy Father, I respectfully ask you to sit this one out. On Sunday, the Pope issued a statement regarding the ongoing strikes in Iran. He said, I am following with deep concern what is happening in the Middle East and in Iran during this tumultuous time. Stability and peace are not achieved through mutual threats nor through the use of weapons which sow destruction, suffering, and death, but only through reasonable, sincere, and responsible dialogue. Look, Pope, I get it. You don't want war. Nobody wants war. It's fine to say that you are praying for peace. But the last part of this statement is totally ignorant of literally all of recorded history, and it does not do a single thing to move the needle. Stability and peace have never, ever been achieved only through reasonable, sincere, and responsible dialogue. Now, you may listen to me and point to Europe and say, look, we have peace there. But how did we get that peace? Not by a nice round of sincere dialogue. It came after 2 world wars that killed tens of millions and left nations physically and psychologically ruined. Only after the continent bled itself dry did Europeans say never again, and then they proceeded to build institutions and dialogue that have lasted for the last 80 years. The Soviet Union, they didn't just succumb to responsible dialogue. The dialogue was built on the back of the threat of nuclear arsenals ready to destroy their nation. It wasn't dialogue that led to peace, it was the fear of the alternative. And, of course, the Soviet Union just bankrupting itself, but my point still stands. Even our own United States borders weren't secured by dialogue, but through war. We fought a full-scale war in the 1840s. U.S. troops marched into Mexico City, and only after Mexico was defeated did we sign the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo to fix the borders where they are now. Dialogue came after the guns. Dialogue came because of the guns, not instead of them, not despite them. Even our Canadian borders were built through war. We invaded what is now Canada by force, and the then British forces fought back, even burning down our own capital. Only after years of fighting did we sign the Treaty of Ghent, essentially locking in the borders that we have today. Again, it wasn't dialogue that created these borders. It was war. And I can just keep going down the list. The Abraham Accords came after Israel proved over decades that they could hit back harder than they can get hit. The EU sits on the graves of 2 world wars while living under American protection. Japan's military is still limited to just self-defense because of what they did to us at Pearl Harbor. The Pope's statement misses a key fact about the world, and a problem that many here in America seem to get wrong. We like to project Western values and priorities onto people who don't share a Western way of life. In the West, we value peace, freedom, and prosperity over everything else. But in other parts of the world, they don't. That's why polls show that Putin still has majority support in Russia. That's why the Iranian regime is still backed by many inside the country. For other parts of the world, it's not individual freedom that matters. It's religious domination, or a sense of national strength, stability, or exporting their ideology elsewhere. Pretending that you can just sweet talk your way to the Ayatollah accepting Western ideals is just a denial of who we're dealing with here. And the Iranian regime has proven that over the past 2 months. If it's reasonable, sincere, and responsible dialogue that you want, the Iranian regime has been presented opportunity after opportunity for that. Even after Iran killed over 30,000 of its own citizens for no reason, Trump still gave them the opportunity to have reasonable dialogue. They met 3 separate times, and only after that did CIA and Mossad intelligence realize that Iran was not negotiating in good faith, just as they hadn't been a year ago before Midnight Hammer. Instead, while Iran sent people to negotiate, their scientists were gearing up their refineries, going closer and closer to weapons-grade uranium. So when dialogue is exhausted, and the alternative is a nuclear theocracy that has made it their goal to kill Jews and Americans, then what? Is your solution to just keep talking, to kill them with kindness? That doesn't work in grade school, and it doesn't work here. Or does a nation have the moral duty, yes, the moral duty, to use force in legitimate self-defense? Especially when, as Marco Rubio said the other day, our intelligence believed that Iran was gearing up to strike us first. Now, I don't need to explain this to the Pope, but to my listeners out there, the Church is not pacifist. The Church recognizes that war can be just. Under Catholic doctrine, war is just when the damage by the aggressor, in this case Iran, is lasting, grave, and certain. When all other means of ending the aggression have been ineffective, in this case dialogue, when there's a serious chance of success, and when the means used are proportional to the military goal. Now, you can honestly debate whether this war meets those objectives. I know for certain that dialogue has failed, and that destroying the leaders of Iran who want nothing more than to see Israel and the United States wiped off the map is proportional to the means that we are seeing from Israel and the US. The only thing that you can debate is whether preemptive strikes meet the first criteria, that the damage from the aggressor is lasting, grave, and certain. I would argue in favor of preemptive strikes under that criteria, but I could see the argument that they don't meet that. But this all underscores a different problem that we see today mostly from the political left, treating diplomacy as a goal rather than a method to achieve a goal. You heard it all the time in the Biden-Harris years. It was all about diplomacy, 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 as if talking in and of itself would mean that they are on the right path. But diplomacy is just a tool to achieve specific objectives, and it only works if both sides fear the alternative. That's why if your analysis of this war is just, oh, you should just talk to one another, then I don't trust your judgment on these issues. The stakes of not engaging with this war is potentially millions of lives in a regime that continues to slaughter its own, while racing for nuclear weapons that it would almost certainly use on Israel and maybe the United States if given the opportunity. So respectfully, sit this one out. There are real, interesting moral questions that the Pope could discuss, like, as I said before, whether a preemptive strike meets the criteria for a just war. But do not pretend that dialogue alone has ever tamed a tyrannical government that clearly views negotiation as a weakness. True stability comes when evil actors learn the price of aggression. Then, and only then, can sincere, reasonable peace talks begin. Europe learned that 80 years ago, Mexico long before that, and America even before that. Iran is learning it now. Let's hope and pray that they learn their lesson for good this time. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Be sure to hit like and subscribe for me if you want more honest discussion. I'm trying to build a platform based on honest, reasonable takes, not the outrage that you see from so many political pundits these days who are just chasing clicks and dollars. If what I'm offering is something that you want, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting me know what you think. With that, I'll see you next time. Thank you.